everyone, and thank you for listening to Brain Fruits, the podcast on women changemakers. I'm your host, Hannah Becker, and today I have the great pleasure to introduce you to Leitha. It's such a pleasure to have you today on the Brain Fruits Season 2 podcast. We will continue to detangle the challenges of the 21st century and portray women changemakers that use tech, finance, and emotional intelligence to shape an economy of well-being. Thank you for joining us today, Leitha, and welcome to the Brain Fruits podcast.
Well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Leitha, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your startup trajectory to date?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I have to say when I went to school, when I got going, there wasn't really a notion of being a startup leader or being in startups at all. It was just not part of the landscape at that time. So I studied journalism, of course, but the industry, of course, grew up as my career grew up, and so I was really lucky to be in the right place at the right time at a lot of different companies. And was able to make good use of a lot of different opportunities as they came along. So these days I'm kind of a digital strategy leader here in Berlin. I have the opportunity then to give back to the environment. I do a lot of mentoring of startups here. And of course, I've established a couple of different companies. So the company that I'm currently working with and for is FinMarie. And that is, the first real financial platform that was created here in Germany by and for women. And we are really working to help women begin their journey in investment and financial strength. And so, I think if there's a thread through my career, it's that I feel like with each step I've taken, I have been able to get closer and closer to things that feel really vital to me. I think when you're starting your career, of course, you take whatever comes your way in some cases, but I think as you get a little further along in your career, you can say, okay, well, what makes a difference in the world, what makes a difference in people's lives, and I want to be there for that, because that's the really exciting stuff to me.
And that's why it's so great to have you exactly on the Brain Fruits podcast today. And to just add on, Leitha is not only the founder of FinMarie, which is like the first online investment solution made by women for women in Europe. She has a really, I must say, you have such an impressive trajectory. You've been a co-founder also of the startup Super GmbH, as well as Mind the Gap. That is some non-profit community organization focused on financial equality for women. You've worked your way through the problem of financial inequality. Now, I would love to hear from you. With FinMarie, you focus a lot on confidence and helping women to learn how to invest. We can see that confidence is something that pops up a lot at the moment in the startup world, in the FinTech world, really, to say. Lack of confidence is impeding women's financial literacy. Why do women lack confidence when it comes to money?
Well, I think it's multifaceted, right? Like with everything that is complicated, it is multifaceted. I think, I was reading an article actually in Forbes just recently about how women tend to be really courageous more than they tend to be confident. And some of the reasons behind that were, of course, there are messages that women get from an early age, that it's better to get along with others than to be bold, that it is not something that women should be expected in the world to be, the strongest members of any given community. So I think we get a lot of messaging that is subtle, and that we absorb over time, and then we give it back to ourselves and to each other. I think you can now see a lot of messaging to women that, okay, just be confident. I mean, there's some techniques and tricks that people have, things like okay, give yourself mantras, to help to boost your confidence. But confidence, of course, comes outside of you, from without and from within. And so it's one of these things, rather like trust. When you have trust in another person, this is a long, multi-year process of developing that. And it's the same with confidence. It's a long process to develop that, and a quick one to break it down, just like trust. And so when it comes to finances, I think women also get a lot of messaging that they shouldn't be, or don't need to be masters of finance. But it's interesting, when I spent some time in Lithuania, a lot of the women there were like, working in banking, and I said, why are there so many women in banking in Lithuania? And they said, well, of course, women are wonderful with numbers, and women, of course, are it was a natural assumption in that environment and some other environments that of course, finance is the domain of women. But yeah, I think not everybody gets that messaging. Not everybody believes it in themselves. And they reject the everyday evidence that they have, that they have these capabilities. And yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've also seen through Mind the Gap is that women, when approached with the right messaging, are very curious, and they're very eager to learn, and they're very eager to dive into it. But I think there's a lot of messaging out there that is just off-putting, and some of it is just.
It's totally. It's, as you say, it's like the internal component, but it's also the external component that builds a lot of confidence. I think there's a very interesting paper that came out recently, new research that's called like Fearless Women, and it focuses on why is it that women participate less in the stock market, and it finds that it's not only financial literacy that is one of the factors that explains the lack of participation in the stock market. Is also confidence. So it's quite interesting that it correlates so much with the participation. And we can see that, like, when it's as you say, like it's so much about the environment as well. It was very interesting. These researchers had a couple of questionnaires, and when they left out the option of I don't know option that you usually get to answer a specific question when it comes to financial knowledge, then women often actually do know. So I think that tells you a lot about that. Oh, maybe often, like sometimes it could happen that we might think, oh, I actually don't know for whatever reason. And then if we're forced to kind of do know, we actually do know.
Somebody forces your hand and says, you actually do have a better hand than you were revealing, and that's, I think that, if women are given the opportunity, they shine. I mean, this is what we've seen in our research as well, is that when women become investors, they're wonderful investors. They are not as prone to drop a stock just because they get spooked about something. And this is one of the things that, for example, if you follow somebody like Warren Buffett, he'll say, follow an index fund, buy and hold, just, do your dollar cost averaging and go for the long term. And women do tend to do that, and to invest in a way that is in line with a really good rate of return at the end of the day. They don't tend to be day traders. They don't tend to be the people who are doing, really risky kinds of investments. And so, I mean, if I had my way in the world, I would say that, women should be in charge of banking across the world. I think maybe we wouldn't have had, the banking crisis that we did.
Interesting if you say that.
It would have been an interesting, comparison if we could do an A/B. But of course, you can't go back in time.
Yeah, I hope at some point in time, if we could go back in time, it would be kind of lucky to be able to do a hypothetical A/B testing here. Okay, from the survey that we see, with participation of women in the stock market is not as we would like it to be, partially explained by financial literacy, partially explained by confidence. Interesting enough, confidence among women and when it comes to financial matters is not very different across the world. So it doesn't really matter if these type of questions are posed in rich or poor countries, the level of confidence is equally low among women when it comes to financial matters. Now, in Germany, it's still one of those countries, of course, doing much better in comparison than some other EU countries, but there's still a gender gap in financial literacy as well in Germany. What is behind that?
Well, so across Germany, just in general, Germans are great savers. They're not exactly wild about investing, and I think some of that has to do with education and a lack of knowledge about the difference between inflation, which affects savings, and compound interest, which is the magic behind investing in something. But I think with women, when it comes to investment, you have a couple things going on specifically for Germany. One is an interesting and a unique angle that I've heard since actually having moved here, which is if you grew up in the East, if your family grew up in the East, a lot of times, money is not something you talk about. It's not something that you focus on, and it's considered not socially appropriate to even have a desire to talk about that. So it's
because then you're so greedy, right? Like
you're greedy, money you're hoarding, you're exactly. And the notion that you're trying to set the old lady that you will be in the future up for success, so that she doesn't have to collect bottles at the corner and turn them in for a fund. That's not part of the conversation, or the fact that women really do need financial backup so that they can step out of bad situations when they have them in their lives, or for example, I had a friend who refers to it as the fuck off fund, excuse my language, but she said that sometimes you need to walk away from a job for some reason, or you need to walk away from a relationship. And if you don't have the financial backing to do that, it reduces your life options. But getting back to the investment notion, a lot of people in Germany are from childhood told that saving is the way, save. But that second part of the conversation about when you have enough in an emergency fund, it's time to move it into an investment, because your cash is actually really threatened over time by inflation. And I think that's a really important topic for today, because we're seeing inflation at a high rate now, and the economists that I've spoken with just recently have an expectation that inflation is going to continue and could linger for quite some time. This could be an issue, and when inflation comes around, your cash is not safe. So your safety cushion, it's liquid. It's right there for you. Should you need to escape a bad situation, it's got your back. But you don't want to keep your entire nest egg in a cash situation. It's one of the messages that I think is not strong in Germany, and it's not strong among women talking to each other.
Yeah, I mean, conversations around finance, I also noticed that it only started quite late in my 20s, to be honest, that I was trying to push even my friends to start talking about finance and take it much more serious than I have ever taken it before, just because, I mean, from an upbringing aspect, I was not so much exposed to different methods to invest or even think about how to save money, right? And that you first start with this cushion, as you're talking about, that you should have your emergency little buffer that you always want to have, and then you start investing. I don't know what to put it in, and they rely a lot on, I don't know, some personal information that they get via friends maybe, or via their parents, which is not always the most unbiased information, of course, one can get. So there's a lot to do, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking a little bit more about the solution. How can fintechs like FinMarie that design specific financial solutions for women be used to help build the confidence and the knowledge gap to get rich?
Well, yeah, and I always say, like, getting rich, it's a long haul. It's a long journey. You know, you don't get rich quickly in this way, but you do get rich eventually. So, like, get rich later, get rich
Post-mortem.
Well, but I think that the reason that fintech can address this is because fintech is generally embedded in small enough organizations that you can take risks, that you can iterate, that you can listen to customers and then implement immediately what it is that they're asking you, and what it is that your research is telling you. So if you're a large organization, it's like moving the Titanic. It's much harder to move in any particular direction, and speaking to a market in a really transparent and meaningful way becomes really difficult for larger organizations. And one of the things that we've found is that if you are delivering tooling that is gender neutral, then you are delivering tooling that is not tuned to women, because they don't react to quote gender neutral tooling as if it's gender neutral. A lot of the women that I have spoken with have said, I've gone to trading platforms, I've signed up, I look around, and I leave because they don't get the welcome that they want and need in order to even get started. And so, women are extremely busy, and so a lot of the ones that I've talked to have said, okay, well, I tried once, it didn't feel right to me, and I walked out the door, and I haven't been back since. Yeah, and I think that's where fintech can help. I mean, we can put out the welcome mat, and we can make a nicer entry, and actually welcome people in and say, no, you are the one that we want to talk to. You are the one who we want to help. And so that's messaging that I think is easier for a smaller organization to do, and easier to, for example, if you're tuning your marketing, if you're tuning your tooling to this group, then you can do a much better job at voice.
Totally. I think that fintechs, I mean, in general, they always address this. They have one thing in common. They're addressing this problem of trying to refuse the obfuscation, conflict of interest, and information asymmetry, right? That's often associated with these very archaic financial services and transactions. And it really is amazing to see that they foster transparency. They have a much better playing field in the sense of they get to their customers much closer. Like, they really form a different relationship through technology than what we've seen traditionally through people. And of course, these people in banks traditionally used to be mostly men, and now that is really, really changing. So that's a great development that we can really, really be happy to observe.
Absolutely. And I think that's what fintechs can bring, is these messages to niche markets, or products to niche markets, which these are markets that the larger businesses can't necessarily explore for various reasons.
So can you walk me through an example of what FinMarie would offer me if I would walk into your door tomorrow and would be looking for a cost-efficient and transparent investing solution? What would you tell me?
Well, I mean, one of the first things that we can offer you is just a conversation. I mean, and of course, any bank can do that. But are you walking into the bank? Are you sitting across a long desk from a person who is presumably wearing a suit and sitting at a laptop and writing notes about your situation? Or are you talking to somebody who looks and speaks rather like you do? The first part of it is, can you understand who it is you're talking to, and see yourself somehow in that person, and understand that this is a person that you can trust. In some cases, people can do that with their banks, and I'm happy for that. But I think that one of the things that we've seen with FinMarie is that we have attracted both women and men who have gotten recommendations from others. I mean, that's one of the things that has been a real strength for our business over the years, is that people are really happy with their experience, and they recommend it to everybody they know, including the men in their lives. And so everything from coming in the door and having a conversation with one of our staff members, like we have you can have a 15-minute conversation, or an hour and a half, whatever suits you, or you can just you can dive into the tooling that we have, and of course we're expanding that, and we'll have more next year. But I think the first part of it is just developing that trust, and some of the way in which we develop trust is that we just happen to be people who are very passionate about the topic area in general. So, for example, being a part of Mind the Gap, and doing a lot of events that are around financial education gives you some street cred. So people will come to us just because our CEO, Carolina Decker, is somebody that they've seen, who they've heard of, who speaks transparently about the topics they're interested in, and isn't using a lot of language that would suggest that she's recommending something because she's getting a kickback from it, but rather that she understands the financial position that people are in, and wants to help. So I mean, I think that is the feeling that we will continue as we grow and develop. I think that, for example, not everybody can just have like a 90-minute conversation with Carolina. She doesn't have that many minutes in the day.
Yeah.
But as we scale and grow, we want to continue having a trustworthy and transparent conversation as people come in, and asking the right questions, and making sure that they feel like, okay, you're listening to what my goals are, what my worries are, and understanding where I want to go, which in many cases for women, that can be very different from the path of men who come to, for example, a trading platform. Maybe they just want to play the game. Maybe they want to make some money. A lot of times women will come to us and say, I want to build a future for my family. Kind of organization.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I would be happy to walk into your branch at any time, I think, when you open one at some point in time. That I have to cut out, sorry. But to continue, we can see that FinTech is not only a really interesting space when it comes to business growth. I mean, now, especially with the pandemic, even the Germans have to get rid of their good old cash is king mantra. And it seems that a lot of more people are moving digital. We can see that from some market research, global FinTech market was already worth like 137 billion in 2018, and now until 2022 was predicted to have an annual growth rate of 25%. That's quite impressive. What are the biggest opportunities and risks for FinTechs of the future? What does it take to thrive in this very competitive market?
It's an interesting question, because you're asking about the future, and isn't it funny that like we all want to know about the future, but like it's really difficult to predict the future. I think it's difficult even predicting what the weather next week is going to be, much less the future of FinTech. But that said, I think that some of the interesting areas coming up are going to be in, for example, sustainable funds and sustainable investing,
Yeah.
because there's not a lot of transparency for people in what sustainable investing really is, and for that matter, what the regulatory environment will be in the future, as far as clarifying what your sustainable investment is really getting you, as far as as far as your goal of saving the world and doing well for yourself. I could say that could be even considered like an emerging market, where it's like there's a lot of questions there. I mean, there's opportunity, but it's not a sure bet that any given fund that you invest in sustainable is going to be profitable, and is going to actually make a good impact for the issues that you want to impact. The other one that I would say is, I think there's a lot of interest right now in NFTs. You'll notice that the word of the year, I think, was NFT. Crypto is an interesting area for people, and of course, there is a lot of discussion around it. But one of the problems with that area, again, is regulation and compliance. Nobody has a clear answer on how things are going to be taxed. I have friends who are selling NFTs, but they've had like 3 or 4 different answers on like what their tax obligation at the end of the year will be, because nobody knows. It's new.
Yeah.
And the other
and the
part
regulator also doesn't know. I mean, that's the point. They have
regulator
it feels like they
know.
have a hard time to understand and you can't put it in a box, right? That's really the challenge. I think it is so diverse that you can't have this one size fits all, even from a regulatory perspective. It's not possible to put it around.
Absolutely. And you can't predict the future. So you don't know, is China going to say just no? And then how does that impact your investments if you go in that route? I mean, it at this point, it really is as risky as going down to the track and putting money on horses. And so, and especially if people are like borrowing money then to put it into cryptocurrencies, that's particularly dangerous, because of course, there's the power of compound interest. The opposite of that, of course, is compound debt, compound loss. And so, but as far as fintechs go, I think we have the same concerns. Like, what is the regulatory environment going to be like for our businesses in the coming years? Right now, the European standard for example, robo-advisory is it's fine. The robo-advisors really need third-party oversight, but the government isn't going to do a lot to regulate it at the moment, because it's not considered a threat to the global markets. But if that sector becomes larger, then it potentially does become a threat to global markets. So there are a lot of questions, and one of the things about fintechs is that they kind of push the envelope. They're kind of pushing things forward, and whenever you push things forward, the regulatory environment lags behind.
Having heard about your success story with FinMarie, what are some of the recommendations that you would have for our community of listeners to become the fearless women in finance?
Well, I mean, like, you say fearless. I would say fake it till you make it. I mean, you have to. Like, it comes back to confidence, because like some days you have it, some days you don't, right? But I think one of the things that I would say as just a personal tip is that you have to make that identity kind of part of your personality. So I'll tell you a story of like years ago when I was in my 20s. I was zero athletic, just not at all. It was not part of my identity. And I started running. I started biking. I over the years, I noticed that I was becoming more and more sporty, because it was really doing good things for my life. But it wasn't until I was like, I'm in my 40s now. It wasn't until I was in my early 40s, and one of my friends, said, "Oh, well, you're an athlete," and I said, "No, I'm not an athlete." And they said, "Actually, you do marathons, you run 5Ks every weekend, you've cycled 150 miles, the other month. You can probably consider yourself athletic at a certain point." And I think, our definitions of ourself
Yeah.
need to be kind of leading in a way. So I probably should have claimed the athletic part of myself years ago. And I think it would have changed my relationship to the sport I did, because it's like, oh, well, of course I do sport, I'm athletic. I think in the same way, I would say, to want to really make financial savvy a part of their lives, needs to make, I'm a smart business lady, like I'm a financially savvy woman.
And we get back to the mantras, right? And I must say, I use them and they work.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's as you say, like, I used to hate this sentence, fake it till you make it, but you're the second person on the show that is saying that to me.
Yeah.
And I kind of started to incorporate it myself, because there is no other way. If you are especially a curious person that wants to make an impact and that wants to build your own identity, to build your own career, that's the only way to go, because there's so many uncertainties that you just have to trust yourself that you will find the right pieces and puzzle them together. And it's not about being arrogant. I always say, like, confidence is not equal arrogance. Confidence means that you build up the courage to go into a situation that you haven't been in before, and that you just also say, hey, I just really don't know. That's confident.
Absolutely. And if you don't think everybody else isn't doing that, you're deluding yourself. It's because we all are born blank slates, right? And we need to learn things. We need to acquire skills. If you didn't acquire those skills in childhood, you can get them when you're an adult. You are not a fully formed being, and you can change into whatever you want to be, honestly. And so commit to being financially savvy. That should be part of your personality.
Any insights from your startup journey for the future women change makers that want to make the world a better place with finance?
Insights from the startup journey. I would say there is a thread here in confidence, because one of the things that I've discovered about startups is that in order to create a startup, in order to create anything really, even if you're just putting together an amazing party, whatever it is that you're creating, you have to be the first believer. And once you are the first believer and you convince yourself of it, then you can start convincing other people of it. And once you have convinced other people of it, you'll be surprised at how fast the thing grows and how fast the passion catches. Everybody at a party doesn't want to be the person who's the first one out there dancing, but somebody has to be that person. So if you can, sum up your courage and your confidence and, be the first dancer, bring in the second dancer, bring in the third dancer, before you know it, you have something that is something that everybody else wants to be at, what everybody else wants to be a part of. And so I would say,
I like that.
Be the first mover. It's tough, but it's rewarding. It's rewarding. And
maybe we should rephrase this, like, the first mover advantage to the first dancer advantage. I think that would be great.
Advantage. I think the first dancer has a lot of courage, and it really takes until you get to, like 5 or 10 before it starts. Oh, okay, yeah. Now it starts being something. But you could be dancing by yourself for a while, and if you have enough confidence, then you can make it through that period.
That was a great insight. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for sharing that with us. Leitha, that's really amazing. When our listeners want to reach out to FinMarie, where can we find you?
Well, we are very easy to Google, just FinMarie.com, and of course, connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with new and interesting people, especially people who would be listening to your podcast. I feel would be the most interesting people. And yeah, absolutely, we are available all throughout Europe, and then hopefully in time we will be able to go global. So.
Wow, that's an amazing endeavor. I wish you all the best for that. That's a great adventure, I think, going forward.
Thank you so much. And this has been such a pleasure. And I hope that your listeners really enjoy it as well.